Now,
And so let me ask you this. So when you are working with a client, you basically kind of like, have an open canvas, an open space,
yes,
and then whatever you are observing from the client, you're utilizing, and
that's right.
you let the client kind of like observe. Now, if you have a client who you work with this person and they don't have any reaction. They go like, "Oh, well, I feel nothing. It means nothing. It's just my stupid hand. There is no ideodynamic thing happening. It's no young or old, or it's no beauty or ugly. It's no nothing. It's just my hand."
And here's the absolute marvel of this process. It is client responsive. The client
Mm-hmm.
says, I'm getting nothing, nothing's happening. And I go, oh, okay, well, then we're obviously not ready for that now.
Mm-hmm.
So tell me more about what's brought you here. Give me some of your history. I might now, because I'm well versed in a lot of psychotherapeutic processes. I
Yeah.
might then look at what they're doing. They might talk about. They might be storytellers. So I'll that idea of narrative. So tell me more about your story. They might be someone who's saying, my problem is that I think this and I think that. I say, and I'll go in more this cognitive type of approach. There's so much that we can keep busy with the client, but I'll give you a great example of
Mm-hmm.
two examples. One was someone who came to me for tremendous pain, um, and he had a unresolvable injury that was giving him pain all the time. But he was aware that he would get upset about the pain, and that would make his pain worse. And he
Mm-hmm.
wanted me to resolve this upset. So, and I know there's some wonderful techniques that we can use to direct them to resolve this. But I just simply said to him, and use the basic accessing question. And when those hands are ready to feel the energy pull them together, and he was doing that, and he said, "No, I get nothing." I said, "Okay."
Mm-hmm.
We talked. He was a storyteller. He wanted to tell me his story, so he went and told me his story. And who
Yeah.
knows? Maybe his system wasn't ready to work internally until he told me enough of his story.
Yeah.
Whatever it was, we talked for another few minutes, and he went, "Oh, just a minute. Um, uh, no." And we went back, and so I said, "Well, and what happened?" And I prompted him to tell me more of his story. And then a few minutes later, he went, "Oh, just a minute. Uh, no, no, no." He did this about 4 or 5 times. And I'm beginning to think, oh
Amazing.
my God. But he wanted to do mirroring hands. And we
Yeah.
kept telling his story, and something in his system, then his system organized itself rather than
Mm-hmm.
I wasn't telling him. And he just went, ah. Now, I'd never seen anybody do that before,
Mm-hmm.
but his hands were there, feeling the energy between them. And I went, wonderful, which is a word we use a lot in mirroring hands.
Yes.
And I said, and can you share with me what is happening? Because here's another thing that we respect: the client's right to private work. Now, if he
Yeah.
didn't want to talk to me, but he was doing something, then I let him go. Anyway, he said, "No, I've got the head pain. I've got the head pain." And he did
Wow.
some stuff. Maybe 5 minutes. He went on doing this, you know. And I said, "And when you're ready, I wonder what you want to do with that pain." And he,
Mm-hmm.
at one stage, just on his own, he went, "Wah!" And he sat back. And I said, "And what has happened now? Are you able to share?" Always respecting their privacy.
Yeah.
And he said, "I had raised myself up to a 9. I am now back at a 4." And his base level of pain was about a 2. It was always at a 2. He said, "I'm now down at a 4. Now, yes, thank you." Anyway, he said, "That's what I'm going to do. I'm going to grab it and throw it." He said, and later on, he said, "Now I don't have to put my hands up. I can just do it. I just
Wow.
know. I just visualize it and I throw it away." Now, on the other hand, I had somebody who was doing that, saying, "Oh, I don't know. Um, I don't know which hand's doing. I don't know which hands. I don't know which hand's doing what. I don't know. I don't know which hand's doing what." And I said, "Well, I wonder if your right hand just wants to receive. What is it? What is it? This?" And we actually did mirroring hands cognitively. No
Mm-hmm.
trance,
Mm-hmm.
at all. But I could see that his body was doing it, because he would do that and he got some stuff and he did some things. And he said, oh, it feels like this. And I said, well, why don't you put that somewhere? And so he put it over there. And I said,
Yeah.
and if this hand was doing something, what'd that do? And he went, oh, I don't know, it's sort of doing this.
Mm-hmm.
Well, he was working. Now, his cognitive mind was not cooperating. It wasn't interested. It wanted to fight the process, but his implicit world was speaking.
Mm-hmm.
And I just listened to that, respected his cognitive state. He was a bit of pragmatic, an accountant, not wanting to knock accountants, because I know they can be wonderfully creative, but he was sort of the stereotypical sort of guy. And at the end of the session, he developed his own protocol, his own process. He said, well, I should do this and this and this. And I said, well, that sounds like an absolutely wonderful idea. And what he said tallied in with several of the textbooks that I'd read. And it just convinced me all over again that all the therapies that we've read about, all the techniques we've read about, already exist within us. And each of us has a different preference, a different capacity, a different predilection. So to impose what we think, what we're good at, can absolutely be okay, but not the most resonant with that client.
Yeah. Awesome. Awesome. Thank you so much. This is, brings so much more clarity. And of course, it brings so much more confusion to some people who are watching, who are like,
I know.
but what exactly is this, So now you are going to offer a training, a live training in the mirroring hands. Is going to be a training that I'm very much looking forward to. Let me ask you this: who can join this class, this training? Do you need to have any academic or professional background? Do you have to have any like Jeff Zeig told you have to have a master's degree before?
And here's what Ernie said to me. He said, "You be very, very, very clever, and then you can make it very, very, very easy to understand. You can teach." So that is what we will do. Now, it's really important in whatever we do in life, to understand about complex systems. Oh my God, complex systems. We do some games. We literally play some fun games. And as we go through the games, I then point out saying, now do you see what's happening here? This is what it's about. So the point of the face-to-face work, of this in-person workshops, is always to give the person the felt experience. And I assure you that you will come out there and you'll go, I think he talked about a lot of, that was all about some like really complex theory, but he didn't say any theory, but I understand it. And so there are a few elements of shift in your own ways of thinking. See, we see complex theory. I mean, it sounds complex, but it's not. It's quite simple. But we don't have a do this, you get that world. We have a do this, and maybe you get that, but maybe you get something else, but maybe the whole thing's, maybe it goes somewhere else, but maybe you can't, when you do that, get stuck because it's held back by something, some process. And it is true that when you do this to get this particular outcome, that quite often you'll get something like that outcome and people will have benefits. But again, it's like anything else. When someone is playing piano by the music, they can play good music. But when they understand and are given the felt experience, they can play the music without the music, and in ways they didn't even know they could. And in fact, I did some improvisations, which I recorded, and there was one of them, and I said to my wife, I said, oh, wow, I don't know how to do that, where I played the melody in my left hand. I said, I don't know how to do that. But there I was doing it. So that encouraged me to believe that if you give the client the experience, put them in the space, that they are able to find what they can do and what is done. I've seen people do EMDR. I've seen their eyeballs move, and their
Yeah.
trauma is less problem. I've seen people do the swan. I've seen people do the arrow, where they say, I pushed the energy out and blew up everything. I've seen people do all these things. And these wonderful people like Freddie Jaquin and some of the guys
Yeah.
have done this, the
Yeah. Bob
Mike
Burns. Yeah.
Mandel, some of these things. They've brought it out and brought it to our attention, but we thought of it first inside of us. And that's what mirroring hands can wonderfully allow. I had a friend of mine, one of my supervisees, and he was doing parts therapy, and he did the parts, and he got to the point where the parts were, and now let's bring the parts and reintegrate the parts. But my voice came up in his head, and he said, I wonder, will those parts come together now? And the client went, no, not yet. I'm not ready. So this would have been okay, and I hope. But sometimes when they're not ready, it doesn't gel properly, and there's difficulties. Yeah. And so the client then had another couple of sessions, and then they did it themselves. Extraordinary, extraordinary co-creative magic.